Hello, I'm Fernando Sosa, and you're watching Mindset of Steel live show. In this show, we encourage you to crush your limiting beliefs, punch fear in the face, and take massive action in your business and your personal life by focusing on the 80% psychology and 20% strategies. That was a mouthful at the beginning there, ADHD. I'm very excited. Today's episode is episode number 14. So we have a little over 3 months already with our live show. So welcome. If you're here watching live, welcome. If you're watching on the replay, welcome as well. Go ahead and comment below, say hello, say where you're coming from. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to click on the subscribe button and also click on the thumbs up, and the notification icon is very important so that you get notified every time we go live. And if you're interested in some extra bonus content, go to our website, mindsetofsteel.com, and you will become part of the community, basically. And we'll let you know when there's special guests coming up, when we go live during the week, and any special content, bonus content that we'll have in our community. So mindsetofsteel.com. So I'm very excited. Like I said, we have a special guest coming up next. And we're going to talk all about decluttering tips. And in particular, we're going to talk about a particular topic like this where we discussed naming your identity. And if you go back and watch the replay on naming your identity, we talked about the importance that it is when you call out certain behaviors and patterns, that you name your identities, that if it's something that you're doing on a routine basis, you kind of name it. Once you give something a name, it's much easier to address it if it's an issue or not. Even if it's a good thing, when you name it, it gives you more power. Naming something gives you more power. And if it's a good thing, you can name it something. It could be a funny name, a funny word, something that brings you joy. It sets an anchor. You name it and you feel that joy. If it's something negative, then at least you can call it something. And guess what? By naming it, the same name, other people can be naming it as well. So now what happens is that the same problems that you have that you think might be unique, tons of other people have the same problems because you're calling it something, and it happens to be something that is common, right? So when we discussed bringing this topic about chronic disorganization, I was like, wait a minute, I kind of heard about it, but not a lot. And then, you know, if I do a little research, it's a thing, chronic disorganization. So hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe, you know, you do as well, or friends or family, somebody that you know, suffer from chronic disorganization. So we're going to talk about it with our expert, that she's going to clarify this and give us some tips and strategies based on her professional experience. And I'm very excited to bring her in a few moments. And so I'm going to encourage you, if you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and type them in below, and we're going to respond to any comments that you have. And we can make this interactive, and we're, you know, even if you're watching on the replay, we'll still follow up in the comments. So go ahead and comment below, or just to say hello. Just say hello and say where you're joining us from. That will be awesome. If you're listening to us on podcast, please leave us a review. That's also helpful. For those of you that don't know, we're also available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and other podcasting platforms. So that's another way that you can listen to the show on the go. So that's also very excited about that. And the website is just getting bigger and bigger with all the content, all the episodes. We're putting them up on the site. And so I'm very excited about that. So remember, go to mindsetofsteel.com and sign up to be part of the community. So what I like to do now is welcome my special guest. And let me just tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Gayle Gruenberg, and she's the Chief Executive Officer of Let's Get Organized, an award-winning professional organizing firm based in northern New Jersey and serves clients globally. Gayle is a certified professional organizer in chronic disorganization and a certified virtual professional organizer and an organizer coach. She's also the featured organizing expert on Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life's Conversation. That it's with Joan. It's a show on New York's AM 970 radio. So that's very interesting, and she can share a little bit about that coming up. So without further ado, let me just hop in. Welcome, Gayle.
Thank you so much for having me, Fernando. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for being here, and I'm very excited to learn a little bit about what you do and what exactly. Tell me a little bit. We'll have a conversation. I'll ask you a couple of questions, but tell me, our audience, briefly, what is it that you do?
Well, as a professional organizer, I and my team mainly help residential clients, but we are in fact branching out into corporate clients and small businesses. We help our clients establish systems that streamline their lives. People will call us and say, I just can't get organized. Can you please help me? So we will meet with them one-on-one in their space, hold them by the hand if that's what they desire, and take them through a process where they see what they have, categorize it, figure out how to contain it, and then we teach them how to maintain it.
Awesome. And so for somebody how does somebody recognize that they need your service? Because I'm thinking about this, and I don't like, this is organization for me, it's a soft skill that people I think a lot of people just take for granted. And you basically, you grow up, you go to school, you do your things, and then you go out in the world. But organization is not something that I think is learned. It's more like just people are just picking it up and they learn as they go. But now that, there's people that actually study, there's a science behind it, and there's so many strategies to organize.
Very much so.
If people don't identify that they have an issue organizing, what lights up their light bulb and says, oh, I need help organizing, and maybe they reach out to you? How do you find that your customers, your clients get to that point?
Well, the short answer is many people they get to the end of their ropes and they say, I'm so overwhelmed, my life is out of control, I need to get some help from somebody on the outside. Mm-hmm. And that kind of leads me to describe what it is, why do we call something chronic disorganization? So someone who is living with chronic disorganization has, they've been disorganized pretty much their entire lives. Yes, you might say that organizing is a soft skill, but in a moment, I'll just talk about how the brain functions with regard to organizing. But with chronic disorganization, someone has been disorganized most of their lives. They've had a history of failed self-help attempts. They have the anticipation of being disorganized without any kind of outside intervention. And being disorganized negatively impacts them on a daily basis. So when someone gets to the point where they say, I can't do this, my life is falling apart, I need somebody to show me what to do, that's when they tend to pick up the phone. And for many of us in past generations, I don't think that organizing was taught as a skill. Now, recently, within the last few decades, I believe there are schools who include organizing in a curriculum. Some people did not grow up in an organized home. Sometimes professional organizers, especially those who specialize in chronic disorganization, we do work with people who hoard. So if someone has grown up in a hoarded home, there's a lot of mental illness there, there's a lot of dysfunction, and they just didn't absorb, so to speak, through osmosis, any of the skills that pertain to organizing.
I see. And so if is there a link or a relationship between chronic disorganization and maybe some type of like maybe somebody that has ADHD? Is
Very
that
much so.
is there a link there?
There is a very big link. ADHD is one of what we call brain-based challenges. And I would love to just say that I am very active in the Institute for Challenging Chronic Disorganization. They are the credentialing body that conferred upon me my credential in chronic disorganization. And through them, I have learned a ton about people who are challenged by being disorganized. And we say that people who are suffering or living with brain-based challenges often have what's going on in the brain is there's a compromised section of the brain, often the prefrontal cortex, as well as other parts of the brain that all work in conjunction with one another. And if the prefrontal cortex is not stimulated, if there are deficits in certain neurotransmitters and other chemicals in the brain that don't allow someone with ADHD or other brain-based challenges to perform the functions required to be organized, then there's a bit of a challenge there. And those functions would be things like sequencing, categorizing, sorting. There's inhibition control issues. There are emotional challenges. So someone with ADHD may be presenting in a certain way. They might have one of the three kinds of ADHD, which could be inattentive type, hyperactive type, or combination type. Excuse me. Gosh, I could just go on and on and on about ADHD. And many of my clients do have ADHD. And one thing they say is if you know one person with ADHD, then you know one person with ADHD, because every individual brain is unique.
I see. And when, is it the same thing, like when somebody's, what makes somebody chronic and somebody not chronic? Is it like a temporary thing or what's the difference? Or when does the word chronic come into play?
Chronic came into play probably about 2 decades ago, maybe 2.5 decades ago, when Judith Kohlberg, who is a very well-known organizer, coined the term chronic disorganization. And that's how we came up with the definition that someone has been living with this challenge for most of their lives and really anticipates having it without any help. So chronic is really someone who has, they're really living with daily challenges. Someone who is situationally disorganized may have experienced a triggering event that impacts their ability to organize and their current systems. And it might be a wonderful event, like someone's getting married or they've had a baby. They're combining households with maybe a parent. And it could be a negative event. Maybe there's been a divorce or a death in the family, a move, retiring. Sometimes aging also comes into play for situational disorganization. And it's a temporary situation, which is why we call it situational. Once the triggering event has been resolved, so to speak, then basically their brain settles back into the pattern of being able to organize. Whereas chronic, it's going to be there forever.
I see. Interesting. And so I can see, so some people can be just disorganized because some life event is happening and, everything is upside down, and that life event might last a little bit of time, right? It could last a couple of days or a couple of months too, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's interesting. So the distinction between chronic versus situational. Situational is just temporary. And I guess the situational is not really a brain-based challenge. Is that right?
Well, that's correct. It's not a chronic brain-based challenge. Situational disorganization can arise from certain brain-based challenges. Forgive me, I'm going to just dial that back for a second. When something happens, when there's a situation, the brain does change.
Okay.
If you've ever noticed that when you're under stress, it might be a temporary stress, but it's like we get to be a deer in the headlights, right? The brain just shuts down. All of the higher level functions that the brain is capable of doing sort of goes on pause. And what happens is another part of the brain, which I believe is the limbic system, or the amygdala, which is, it's the fight or flight and the emotional sections of the brain, they tend to take over. So we might be very sentient beings in everyday life, but if something happens that screws up our cognitive abilities to focus, stay organized, and we get into that very primal part of the brain where the emotions and the knee-jerk reactions take place, then all bets are off.
I see. Okay, and so the science behind, I guess, brain science is this like a lot of when you're talking about organization, and you're thinking about, like we say, brain science, right? What happens in the brain? It's not just you're following a pattern and just organizing X, Y, Z, but there's a lot going on up here that has to do. Like some people might have. There's no template that say, okay, you have to organize, just do this.
No.
Because everybody has something going on up there that, the pattern, the routine might work for one person, but another person might have something else going on, and that doesn't apply to everybody.
That is absolutely true. And you definitely find that in situational as well as in chronic, because everyone's brain is wired differently. Some parts of the brain may be more developed, maybe not quite so developed. There's so much brain science involved that I wouldn't even know where to start to tell you all about it.
What would be the top challenges that you've seen your clients have with organization? What are like the top challenges?
Well, okay, for either situational or chronically disorganized clients, often paper is a huge challenge. With each piece of paper, there's a decision that needs to be made. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole science behind decision making as well. So if someone is, if they do have any kind of a brain challenge, making a decision may not happen. So when you're bringing paper in every day, you're opening the mail, you look at it, you put it aside, your brain may shut down, and it piles up. And that pile up could happen over decades. Mm-hmm. I've had the privilege of working with a lady twice a week for the last few weeks who she just had so much going on in her younger life that as paper came in of any sort, it could have been bills, it could have been kids' projects, it all got tossed into a bin and it hasn't been looked at in 30 years. So it's all deferred decision making.
Right. So if somebody is living with a person, like I can see this being a problem with one person by themselves, but when they're in a household or with friends or at work, and you have different types of people that they're not disorganized, they are organized, and there's an individual, a coworker, or somebody that has this condition of chronic disorganization, it might seem obvious for the person that is organized to just tell the person, just do X, Y, Z, just do it. But if there's a brain-based challenge there, it's just not going to work, right? And
that's
so that can create some kind of conflict in the environment, right? If somebody is going through this and basically they don't understand the other person's challenge because they just can't follow the same rules that the other people are following. Is that right?
That is absolutely 100% correct. And yes, there are certain, it's not animosity, I'm looking for a word. There are conflicts that happen at mm-hmm. work or in a home. You're absolutely right, between people who are naturally organized and those who are not. And it all dovetails very well with the title of your show about mindset, because both sides need to have an open mindset. The people who are organized will need to be educated and explained to that the person who is disorganized has a very different head, a very different brain, just wired so very differently. So the organized person has to be open. The disorganized person also has to be open in learning a bit more of self-awareness, agreeing to learn how to do things differently. And that too will come back to the brain science, because we have neural pathways. And those neural pathways, the way we think, have been deeply entrenched. You know, we've all gotten to several decades of age, and we've been doing things in a certain way for a very long time. And the same is true of someone who's disorganized. You know, this is how they think, but in order to become more organized, what they need to do is have a tiny shift sometimes, and with a lot of practice, develop new neural pathways and just repeat new ways of doing something over and over and over again to create a different neural pathway, so that they can integrate organizing skills into their skill set. And I think there has to be a lot of open communication between people at work, people at home, a lot of understanding, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of patience.
Yeah. I can see how, you know, how it's much more beneficial to acknowledge that there's an issue. I mean, if you don't know what it is, like I said at the beginning, if you don't identify the issue, somebody might just dismiss the other person as being something else and not understand it. In terms of relationship, I saw one of your videos on how clutter can affect even in people's relationship or intimacy, right? And I just want to share this quick 1-minute video just to show. Just a 1-minute video. We can talk about it. Here you go.
My father always said that relationships are the hardest thing you will ever do. Think about that deep down. What gives you the most stress?
Do you hear it?
About your older parent?
I do.
Fret about your children's futures? Argue with your spouse about responsibilities at home? Chances are some of you are screaming, yes! Hi, I'm Gayle Gruenberg, CPOCD, Chief Executive Organizer of Let's Get Organized. As a professional organizer, I help clients organize their lives as well as their homes. Clutter can be a direct contributor to a troubled sex life. When clients call in a professional organizer, they don't just want us to clear their spaces. They want us to help them clear their mental clutter and get closer to their loved ones. They want to clear a literal and figurative path to the bedroom. Clutter is a physical barrier to intimacy. If you can't even see the bed because things are piled up all over it, there's no room for someone else to share it. Clutter is a figurative barrier to intimacy. Why is stuff piled up all over the bed? The answer will be different for each individual or couple. In my experience, the underlying issues in the relationship can be what caused the clutter, and the clutter contributes to the underlying issues. Want to improve your sex life by getting organized? Call me, Gayle Gruenberg of Let's Get Organized at 201-364.
So that's a very well done video, and it explains a lot in just 1 minute. I mean, it makes total sense to me, how the clutter can affect couples. Do you get I mean, this is a touchy subject, because I guess this would be, how would somebody approach? I mean, how do people approach you if they have something like this? I mean,
it tends to come out as we work together. Okay. Often someone won't pick up the phone and say, I'm not having sex with my spouse because of my clutter. But they might call and say, oh, there's stuff on my dining room table and it's preventing us from having dinner together. Mm-hmm. And then as we work together, we build that trust. People do tend to open up, and they'll say, you know, it's just affecting my relationship with my spouse. I don't know what to do. So we're not, as organizers, we're not counselors or therapists, but we do tend to listen to a lot, and we try the best that we can to give good counsel without overstepping the boundary.
Yeah, I understand. So I can see, so clutter, it affects people's life in any area, really. I mean, I can see how it affects in work, personal, like family time, right? Just planning family I don't know, vacations or just outings?
Oh, yes. May I comment? There's a significant thing I would like to indicate. Now, there is an ADHD expert out there who we all, as organizers, we admire very much. His name is R.A. Tuckman. He's an ADHD expert. And I do have his book. His most recent book is called ADHD After Dark.
Okay.
So, you know, someone who has done much more clinical research and developed this topic is out there. He wrote the book. I was very gratified to see that he did this because I had been observing the challenge with clutter versus a healthy sex life. So I want to give a shout out to Ari Tuckman for reinforcing the topic.
Cool. So on that note, what tools and resources can people get, like, easily get right now, before, maybe as a first step, and then maybe you know, later on I can tell you, you can share how people can get in touch with you. But are there, you know, what you mentioned, this person as a resource to look up a book? What are the tools and resources would you recommend?
Well, sometimes they can be very simple. All right, hearkening back to clients who have ADHD, they will try anything and everything to help them get organized. And often the trick is to change it up a little bit. So I would say start with something simple like a to-do list. Now, it doesn't matter if it's handwritten on a piece of paper, but just one notebook, preferably, because often people with ADHD are all over the place, and, you know, they use multiple notebooks and scratch a note here and put it down and forget where it is. So if I can caution, one place for writing all notes, one calendar, if at all possible, whether paper or electronic. Sometimes people with ADHD are especially drawn to technology, so all kinds of apps are out there. For staying on task, there are timers, calendars that have all kinds of different sensory stimulations, like, you know, everyone with an iPhone is having a beep every 15 minutes, but there are also those that might light up and they might be in color. So the more senses that can be stimulated, the more effective the organizing technique would be. Sometimes just moving around is a great technique. I have what I call the LGO focus formula, which, and it dovetails again with your topic about mindset, in that first, self-care is primary. So if you're not well rested, well fed, well hydrated, and if you are supposed to have meds, if you're not taking them, you're not giving yourself a fighting chance to stay focused. There are, of course, other softer things like being with people you like and listening to music and being with animals. Now, this is all the underlying support system to just create an environment where someone can start to be focused and can use organizing techniques. So we talked paper, to-do list, calendar, reminder systems, clocks everywhere, reminders, checklists, just putting things in places where you use them, using underutilized spaces like the insides of closet doors or kitchen cabinets. Also be mindful of the way you process information, because some people are visual. If you see it, then you remember it. Some people are auditory. You might need to hear it. Moving around for people who have attention issues is usually very useful as well, because you're integrating, you're bringing more oxygen and blood to your brain. So there's a ton more focus. And as I said, you're integrating the activity with your brain, so you're remembering to do things. There's a lot of information out there.
Oh, this is awesome. Well, Gayle, this is very, very interesting, very awesome. Thank you so much. We're running out of time now, but how can somebody get in touch with you if they want to? You know, they looked at the resources, they looked at the book, but they want to reach out for additional help. I have the website here. This is your website, right?
That is my website. That's the best place to find me right now.
Okay. So yeah, I checked that out. There's a lot of resources there and a lot of ways to get in touch, links to your social media and all of that. So Gayle, thank you very much for your time, for sharing your knowledge. If you're watching, you can say, drop your comment there. We'll follow up afterwards. Or if you're watching on the replay, go watch it from the beginning. Reach out to Gayle if you want more information, either for yourself or a family member or a friend, anybody that you know that might be interested in this topic. This has been Mindset of Steel episode number 14. Next week, we go live the same time. So hope to see you there. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you again, Gayle. Any final words you want to just say to our listeners and viewers?
I just want to thank you for having me. It's very important to me to be able to communicate out to the world information about chronic disorganization and remove any stigmas that might be surrounding someone who feels disorganized and may feel that he or she is the only person in the world suffering from these challenges or dealing with these challenges. I'd like to just normalize that you're an amazing person. You have incredible strengths and gifts and talents. Play to those strengths, and there is help available for things that you might not be quite so talented at.
Thank you very much, Gayle. I'm going to leave at that note. Thank you again, everybody. Bye. Thank you, Gayle.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.